Some artists don't follow trends, they define them before the world is ready. In this video, we'll look at 8 artists who were ahead of their time. Imogen Heap. British singer, songwriter, producer, and innovator Imogen Heap began her career in the late 1990s with her debut album I Megaphone, an experimental blend of trip-hop and piano-driven ultra. But it wasn't until her sophomore album Speak For Yourself in 2005 that she established herself as a pioneer in electronic pop. The album's standout single Hide and Seek, a vocoder-heavy a cappella track, was unlike anything else on the radio at the time, though it did modestly on the charts. The song later became a cultural staple, sampled by Jason Derulo on What You Say, becoming the centerpiece for the chart topper. What set Imogen apart wasn't just her songwriting or vocals, it was her vision. She became an early adopter of home recording, using software and MIDI interfaces to produce complex arrangements by herself, long before it became common among independent artists. And most famously, she developed the Mimu Gloves, a wearable tech innovation that allows artists to manipulate music with hand gestures in real time. She debuted this tech during her live performances, inspiring a new generation. She also explored blockchain distribution and fan-driven models of music ownership, reimagining the music industry. She even got to produce on one of the biggest albums of the last decade, Taylor Swift's 1989. Imogen Heap's influence is seen across artists like Billie Eilish and Ariana Grande, who always calls her one of her biggest inspirations.
Imogen Heap made me incredibly starstruck. She's my idol. She's my #1 favorite musician, songwriter, producer.
Her insistence on owning her own masters, building new platforms and unconventional music, now mirrors trends that are reshaping the industry. Amazingly, some of her songs are now going viral on TikTok, even getting to chart on the Hot 100 in the big 2025, 2 decades after she initially released them, showing her enduring legacy. Prince. Few artists redefined the limits of artistry like Prince, emerging in the late 70s with a groundbreaking mix of funk, soul, rock, and R&B. Prince's 1978 debut For You and the breakthrough Dirty Mind in 1980 were bold pieces of music that signaled his genre-defying talent. By the mid-1980s, he had become a global icon with Purple Rain, an album and a film that cemented his place in pop history. But Prince wasn't just a hitmaker, he was a multi-instrumentalist, a producer and a visionary who broke racial, gender, and genre boundaries long before such conversations were mainstream. Prince was a relentless innovator. He fused a lot of genres and even wrote entire albums for other artists under a pseudonym. One of his most radical stances came in the 1990s when he famously changed his name to an unpronounceable symbol in protest against Warner Brothers to reclaim ownership of his music. Long before Taylor Swift's battle for her masters and the rise of independent artists on streaming platforms, Prince was advocating for artists' rights, creative control, and the value of intellectual property. His influence was everywhere. Artists like The Weeknd, Frank Ocean, Beyonce, and even Justin Timberlake have cited him as a key inspiration. His genre-defying approach created a blueprint that many still follow. More than a pop star, Prince was a real visionary. MIA. MIA burst onto the global stage in the mid-2000s with a defiant sound that mixed political commentary with unique music. Her 2005 debut album Arular introduced her fusion of hip-hop, dancehall, and electronic music influenced by her roots and upbringing. It brought something unique at the time. Her follow-up, Kala, in 2007, was a critical and commercial breakthrough, featuring the global hit Paper Planes, which peaked at #4 on the Billboard Hot 100. The album cemented her as a cross-cultural force. It was even sampled on the generational posse cut Swagger Like Us by T.I., Kanye West, Jay-Z, and Lil Wayne. MIA's music was really ahead of its time. Long before the mainstream embraced global fusion, she was sampling Bollywood, African drums, and Middle Eastern music, making genre-defying music that sounded like the future. Her third album, Maya, in 2010, leaned into noise and digital distortion, influencing artists like Death Grips, Grimes, and the hyperpop movement years later. Even as the industry tried to box her into hip-hop or pop, MIA dodged the labels. Today, her impact is echoed by the biggest artists like Bad Bunny and Travis Scott that mention her as a real inspiration.
Like your dream collaborator, who would that be?
MIA.
Though MIA never became a consistent chart topper, her legacy changed the DNA of modern music. Even though she now routinely wiles out online from time to time for not getting her credit, you cannot deny her influence on music. Kate Bush. Kate Bush began her career when she was just 19 years old with the release of Wuthering Heights in 1978, a theatrical ballad written from the perspective of a ghost. The song made her the first female artist in the UK to reach #1 with a self-written track and set the tone for a career built on storytelling and experimentation. Her early albums like The Kick Inside and Lionheart were followed by the genre-defining sounds of Hounds of Love in 1985, which blended classical instrumentation, synthesizers, and drum machines in a daring way. The second half of the album, called The Ninth Wave, was decades ahead of its time, at a time when female artists were often expected to conform to narrow commercial formulas. Kate took control of her music, directing her own videos and producing her own albums. She was a real pioneer in pushing the boundaries of vocal manipulation. Her influence only grew over time. Artists like Fiona Apple and Florence and the Machine called her one of their biggest inspirations. In 2022, her 1985 track Running Up That Hill saw a massive resurgence thanks to Stranger Things, re-entering the charts and peaking at #3 on the Billboard Hot 100, proving how timeless and forward-thinking her music really is. Kate Bush didn't really chase trends, she created her own universe. Chenade OConnor. Chenade OConnor's entrance into the music world was really bold. With her shaved head, she rejected the typical look for a female pop star. In the late 80s and early 90s, her debut album The Lion and the Cobra in 1987 showed her potential, with songs like Mandika blending post-punk and folk influences. But it was her 1990 cover of Prince's Nothing Compares to You that catapulted her into international stardom, becoming a global #1 hit and defining her as a powerhouse vocalist. However, she never really wanted to be a pop star. What made Chenade truly ahead of her time was her fearlessness. She used her platform to speak out on issues like child abuse in the Catholic Church, racism, and misogyny, which didn't go well for her. In her infamous 1992 Saturday Night Live appearance, she tore up a photo of the Pope in protest, an act that led her to being blackballed. But in the years after that, her criticisms have been widely vindicated. Long before cancel culture and callouts became normalized, she was paying the price for speaking the truth. Musically, her influence can be felt in artists like Alanis Morissette and even Billie Eilish, female musicians that show vulnerability in their music. Her fearlessness in blending genres and centering her activism paved the way for artists to talk about something real in their music. In the latter part of her career, she really struggled with her mental health and sadly passed away in 2023, but her legacy lives on. Bjork. Bjork began her music career as a child prodigy in Iceland, later gaining international attention as the frontwoman of the band The Sugar Cubes. With her debut, she fused house, jazz, and orchestral pop, which was rarely seen in mainstream music. Her next few albums, especially Post in 1995 and Homogenic in 1997, further cemented her reputation as an innovator. What made Bjork truly ahead of her time was not just her sound, but her world building. Albums like Vespertine in 2001 explored ambient pop and ASMR-like production back in the early 2000s. In recent years, she embraced VR-integrated music videos and AI music with her albums Utopia and Fosora. Her visuals were really unique way before artists really paid attention to their aesthetic. Bjork's influence is massive, but often uncredited in mainstream circles. Even Radiohead's Thom Yorke called her an inspiration. In the realm of art pop and experimental electronic production, Bjork is the blueprint. Though never chasing commercial trends, she consistently stayed ahead of her time. With over 20 million albums sold and a lot of Grammy nominations, her legacy is defined by her influence. Daft Punk. Daft Punk started as a part of a French house movement, but quickly redefined the genre. Their debut album Homework in 1997 brought underground house into the mainstream, with hits like The Funk and Around the World. Their robotic personas became an iconic image, rejecting celebrity culture and putting the focus on the music, something artists like Marshmello and Deadmau5 will later adopt. Daft Punk's influence exploded with Discovery in 2001, a visionary mix of disco, house, and pop, laying the groundwork for the EDM revolution that would come in the 2010s. Tracks like One More Time and Digital Love became hits and even predicted the sound that would dominate dance music a decade later, influencing artists like Skrillex and Swedish House Mafia. Even Kanye West sampled Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger for his #1 hit Stronger, introducing their sound to an entirely new audience. In 2013, Daft Punk returned with Random Access Memories, a modern classic that swept the Grammys. They were even featured on 2 huge hits from The Weeknd's Starboy album. Despite disbanding in 2021, Daft Punk's approach to music production and branding lives on. They helped pioneer the festival DJ culture and revolutionize their genre. Tamman Pala. Tamman Pala is the brainchild of Australian producer Kevin Parker. Debuting with Innerspeak in 2010, he quickly set himself apart with a modern twist on the 70s psychedelic rock. But he didn't just replicate vintage sounds, he reinvented them. His second album, Lonerism, came in 2012 and mixed guitar-driven production with experimental synths, and named one of the best albums of the decade by outlets like Pitchfork and NME. But it wasn't until his 2015 album Currents that Kevin would truly cement himself as a visionary. The album's single, The Less I Know The Better, became an anthem, accumulating more than 2 billion streams on Spotify, and the record went platinum in the US. Currents was embraced by indie fans, electronic listeners, and even pop stars like Rihanna, who covered New Person Same Old Mistakes on her Anti album. Kevin would go on to work with Kanye West, Travis Scott, and The Weeknd. His fingerprints are all over modern pop. Tamman Pala's spaced out sound paved the way for acts like Clairo and Steve Lacy. He redefined what alternative music could be in the streaming era. His work made it clear that genre lines were disappearing. He was ahead of his time and one of the most underrated artists of his generation. Which artists who were ahead of their time did I miss? Tell me in the comments below.